switching it over. So, there.
At that point, in the budget process, the assessment.
Well, maybe.
The assessments that are being budgeted for the next year would be offset, or could be offset, by that surplus that's rolling into that budget. So the statements are correct in saying that based on your revenue documents, each service area has a set budget that it's responsible for and works through that process. And it's very clear as far as with the budgets being generated that if there's 10% over an increase of 10% or more, that it requires the membership vote for that service area. So it would flow in that natural state that surplus would be applied to the budget of the next year that's coming up.
In essence, though, if the budgets were separated in the first place and the accounts were separated, it would be an individual item that couldn't possibly mistakenly or otherwise be spent, which is part of the problem.
Well, the only thing that, as far as the budget is concerned, for the 2021 budget, there would have been a placeholder for that $21,000 to be included. The budgets and the expenses and everything else are being tracked and they are segregated. There is not a bank account for each of the service levels, which we're talking about and working on getting that set up. But from the accounting point, the income statement, the income and expense, and the balance sheets are set up. Well, not the balance sheet, but the income statements are set up in order to show that activity that's occurring. So for the 2021 budget, when it was created last year, there would have been a best guess estimate at that time, taking the net income and the net expenses, or the revenue minus the expenses, to come up with a best guess of what the actual surplus or deficit would actually be. And then that surplus could be built into the budget at that point, and you could either utilize that in order to put your grass down or to offset the assessments being collected for that period.
So the second choice is what I've done in the suggested budget.
So basically what's been proposed by Associate is to offset the budget to and get deficit.
That's what I proposed. They haven't done so yet.
Okay, and well, okay, let me go back then. So the proposed budget that we have a couple different options laid out, and I know you've kind of proposed something, and what from your associate side, what's been proposed is that we cover the things as presented, utilizing the surpluses in those areas, correct? Am I basically at this point? Not to go into all the numbers.
For the 2022 budget?
Yes.
The 2022 budget?
Well, 2021 budget and then is covering that. I'm probably getting things confused. Maybe.
The 2021 budget did not accommodate that.
Okay.
There was no offset that was entered for that revenue, that surplus to be there. For the 2022 budget, I don't believe that there was an estimate of what the service levels.
The one the finance committee did as well.
Right.
We did pass it on.
Okay, so that's what we should really
yeah. So what
discussing.
It's a jumping off point. I think the argument here, especially the first comment, and it's something that can clarify with the $74,696 or 24 cents we're calling 75K. But
well, okay, well, here's just a question for you. So the assessments for last year's reserves was supposed to be 159,204 at the end of the year. Let's be dumped in. Comparing March's, because the financials uploaded that we have, was kind of limited. Between what was entered for March 2020 and into the year 2020, the combined reserves were all of 49,287 and change. So that's essentially $75,000 underfunding to the reserves.
Well, when you're talking about from the reserves, the disconnect there was specific with the townhomes, and that was to the tune of $35,000. Rosetta had provided a due to, due from of 7,000 and change for 1 month, and we had booked that. And then going forward, since it was in the budget, without knowing the hole in the ground or anything else, the reserves were being accrued for. They were not being transferred from the operating account to the reserve account, but they were being accounted for on the balance sheet as a due to, due from going forward. So that $36,000, according to the CPA's report as well, that was all being reversed back. So it was there's entries that are coming in order to reverse those reserves.
So let me take that where you're at, because we're on the same page. So for everyone's reference, we agree with all that we just said, okay, that about where we transferred it now. We agree with that. But this is where it becomes a little harder to understand for some people. We did the transfer back to from, okay, back and forth, we did that, and it came out zero. But then we decided to move the check out of the reserves that we thought was supposed to be in operating, and we moved it out. Hold on. I'll let you qualify. So then we fixed that, and we zeroed again, and we were in pretty good shape. But the problem that we see is that if it had been paid in the original budget, which is the original $91,000 I told you we were short, it would have come from the 2020 budget as opposed to the 2021. So now we take the $75,000 out of 2021's revenue, and we pay back the debt that we had in that year because that we were shortfall. Now we're short this year.
Okay, I kind of follow where you're going with that.
And the $75,000 was two separate issues. One happened to be the reserve funding for the limited townhomes, and then the other $75,000 issue was due to receiving a closeout check for an operating account, and it was deposited into the reserves, which then was cleared and moved back into operating in December.
Isn't that ironic? They were both $75,000.
The one was 74,000 and change, and the other one was 79,000, I think.
So I mean,
basically what you're saying is the $75,000 that Sean is talking about with the check that went into operating or into reserves and was supposed to go into operating is one thing, and that was paid back. But in the accounting, you guys were accruing funds for reserves for Sandpiper, or for townhomes or Sandpiper, which one?
Well, townhomes is Sandpiper.
Yeah, Sandpiper. For Sandpiper, you were accruing it, but not collecting it, right?
No, it was
not transferring, but it was accrued in the accounting, but it was not transferred. Is that correct?
But if it wasn't collected from the builder.
So it was represented, no, it was part of your operating funds, and it was presented on the financials in the time period. So for the year end, it was accounted for. It was just a physical bank transfer that had to occur. It had nothing to do with the accounting functions of being a deficit or a surplus in that activity.
You're referring to the reserve.
Yeah, where it becomes difficult for if you look at the numbers and you said, oh, well, I put it back. Okay, I'll give you a fairly simple example. A can that's got $75 in it. I take it, by accident, I put it in the wrong can. I've got another can that's got 75, this one has 0. Oops, found that, I put it back. Now has 0, okay? Because we thought it had 75 over, we were accruing more money than needed to be in the can. The can should have been 150. It's only still 75, so we go, uh-oh, grab 75 from this other can and put it back now in negative 75 in this can.
So I do want to get to the solution, what you're proposing, because I think, I think we kind of.
I do want to get to the solution, but I'm sorry if I'm being thick, but I'm still not really following why there's disagreement about the 75,000. Is it a shortfall or is it not a shortfall?
Shortfall is spent from one budget to the other, carrying a shortfall from last year's budget forward.
Did you understand that, Barb?
No, I'm not-
91,000.
Wait,
Yeah, and I remember that was in the, you know, the email that was discussed back and forth of where that, the deficit had lied there, and they reported that that was, as you said, $91,000.
Pay back the funds, just, let's say, $1,000 for 3 or 4 months. It builds up to $75,000. Okay?
Yeah, and I see what I see.
We're already $91,000 down. We can't actually pay it. So now what we do is we take it from this to pay it back. We're caught up for 2020. But we carried that $75,000 forward to 2021.
yeah, see, so we do have a shortfall then. I don't know why that makes perfect sense. So,
The issue is the association overall had a net income of $7,000 for the year. There is no way that the association can have a net income for $7,000 and be stating that there's a $90-something thousand deficit across all of the sites.
Well, it's not across all, it's just the master, correct?
It's only the master we're talking about. You keep trying to include them all together. We're talking about the master specifically.
I think that's the problem
Right.
here is that, I'm getting it, in 2020, we were short money, but we, out of the 2021, I'm sorry,
2021.
we were in 2021, and this is where we are, so this is why we're cash flow positive, but it's
You
only.
accounted for it though. It doesn't matter when you wrote the check. It was accounted for on the books properly. And so therefore, it doesn't matter if you paid for it today, tomorrow, or 10 years from now.
And in accounting, he's absolutely correct. There's no question about it. You paid for it. But explain why it becomes a problem for budgeting for our sake. Is that, I mean, for the community's sake, is it really, if we carry the master, still carrying the debt forward, when do we stop going backwards? You're still pulling money from the service areas.
Yeah, well, that's the issue. We need to fully fund the master with, you
You
know,
need to get the
But-
master back to zero by funding us correctly and then keep it that way.
Well, I have a question. You guys completely were caught up on the reserves. We had a new GL code pop up for assessments receivable for this year, that's now to the tune of $110,476. Who was that supposed to be collected on?
That will be cleaned up. It's just, the offset, instead of going into 4,000, it went into the other GL. That was just an accounting issue that needs to be resolved.
If there's a credit balance to park for their.
Avenue, those are for
The town owns.
the builder, those are the builder homes that were not, the CO didn't exist.
The credit balance. Yep.
Right.
Little over 12 on 2446.
Yeah, we had to go back because those homes were being, based on the budget we provided from Rosetta, we set those up to be billed.
The credit balance carried forward because obviously that's going to make a problem. It looks like the receivables are lower than they really are. It should be zero. There should be a double entry to clear that out. The mistake of making the error in the first place for the count, not your fault, but the count that we got. Take it out of what we'd already built them, it should zero itself out, but it's not, it's a credit balance.
And we will address that. Starting with last week, when my eyes were on it, I've had several different questions and inquiries and trying to get to the bottom of all the puts and takes of what's been going on. And it's through our conversations and the meeting last week, it's now, at least I get a full picture of what's actually transpired.
And that's
So we have to, and part of that, as far as your 2020 financials are concerned, that is part of the exercise that I want to go through with in the next week in order to finalize the 2020 to bring them up to speed with what the CPA had done, providing all of their then going through and working out the issue. We're gonna have a short revenue by the 30-something homes that we have not been collecting.
The university has now set conditions for professors who are called to testify.
The only deficit in those numbers from that situation.
Right, so what he's saying is because we didn't actually sell all the homes in Sandpiper, I did a matrices between the months that we sold by going month per month. Actually had to provide that information for it, it was very helpful. Total up the sales for each month, and then of course prorated it because we prorate the dues for the month. And we'll end up with a $22,000 shortfall from what was projected in the budget in revenue. That's something that will be seen except for the bottom line. We made up for part of that by lake house rentals and things. So it didn't hurt as badly, but we still lost the revenue. So we're projected revenue. That's probably a better way to say that, sorry. Because it was projected by air. And so now we're not doing that at this point, and we're making sure it doesn't happen going forward. But it caused that. So at the bottom of the proposed thing, I have possible projected shortfall of $22,000, and that comes up to be, at this point, with our $8,000 difference, $32,000 in change that we think we're going to be short this year, not carrying anything forward. In addition to that, though, we have the $44,000 that is owed back from just last year, not the year before, the two before that. As we start going backwards, we'll never catch up. But just last year to the service rates. That by itself adds up to a little over $75,000. So if the $75,000 is not in question, the shortfall that I come up with is 160 minus the 8 that we're going to take out, so 152. To get us back to square one.
What did you account for in the proposed budget?
160, so we'll go down, but I'm on the other, because I included the lake house income and so forth, and I took it out, and it comes up to an $8,000 bill. So Richard and I had this conversation, I'm hoping that we'll work through the problems, but this is what we came up with so far.
Okay.
So, okay. So then I guess we still have two kind of outstanding questions to both of you. I would say, Richard, in your opinion, what would you advise for the next steps? We're looking to approve a budget by November 16th. That's the date, right?
Yes.
Yes, that this,
So, I mean, in your professional opinion, what would you suggest we do, and do you consider the $75,000 an immediate pay?
The $75,000 doesn't mean you're paid.
Okay, so you would not put that number in, and
As far as looking at the individual service areas, you had, if the numbers true up, I mean, you have all the information, I'm assuming, for the 2020 breakouts and everything else, but it shows that the paired villas have a $21,000 surplus. The Westlake lots have a $5,600 surplus. The Sagewood Gates had a $17,000 surplus. The townhomes need to be trued up.
That number I did not include because it's not accurate, it's not itself.
okay, so, and it's not accurate because of the issues with the collections?
So the townhome is really kind of a crapshoot because with the matrices of the income helps, but we also have reserve issues that we're talking about that changed it. We also have some collection issues that we'll have in that, so it's really kind of a black hole. So I'm not giving you the benefit of it being surplus, and I'm not giving you the doubt that it's underfunded. It's just going to stay there until we true it up and we'll fix it from there. The others are pretty straightforward. The other thing that I did include is the projected surplus that we may have in these areas, and some of them are pretty high because we haven't spent the money. And I've talked to Heather, and we're not projecting doing any more big budget items for anybody except for if there was some pressure cleaning action coming over at Sabre. So, so basically, I consider that as part of the numbers. So it's all in there, and it's one of these, to your surplus line according to their budget lines, so you can see it. The question is, and Jason and I went back and forth on this question, and he knows I have like 5 times now, the $75,000, if you don't pay it back, what it does is gives you no contingency for yourself and the master, which you've been running tight or overfunded all along. You'll have nothing left at the end of the year again, and we'll be in the same boat again.
Type of
75
underfunding.
comes back where you can actually manage. If you want to do a special project or hire an administrator mid-year, there'll be budget for it. But if you don't, you have to stick to that budget like glue, and there's no variance on it, so there'll be no money left at the end of the game.
I don't think that's probably the best strategy at this point, because I'm sure that we will have things come up throughout the year,
I
No.
don't know things.
Yeah, and so
My
we,
accounting standards, you paid back the 75, but it did carry forward the debt. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
yeah, I understand. I got what you're, so, what I would like to look for is, what the steps to move forward and looking at this proposal, on the proposals that you have kind of suggested how to, address this. And I see that basically, for what I'm seeing is increasing the dues to the master. It's been, you have a couple different options, how dramatically that we do that. And then there's one option which I'm not really in favor of, but you mentioned a special assessment. And could you maybe explain why that option?
Sure, I'll explain.
Before you do, so basically, you're saying, as it sits right now, you still stand by the budget being, proposed budget that financial committee gave is fairly sound. It may go down a bit,
Just a low team at 8,000 divided by 1242.
not much, okay. Okay, so now funding options, special assessment, raise of dues.
So our dues is gonna go up around $70 with or without this problem, just because our budgets have changed. We've added personnel, we've got other expenses. It's gonna go up $7. We talk about this problem, it goes up $70, okay? So that's a given. Special assessment at $135 per head. One time, take a shot in the arm, go back to zero, service areas gets their money back in their account, and we can go forward. The other option, which may be a better option for some, and I think I talked about 50-50 going through the way that people I talked to about it, is to go ahead and raise the dues, the total amount, say $200 total, and keep it there, or possibly lower after we get next year after we get the reserve study, because I can promise you we are underfunded. And so my best guess on the reserve study, without doing the full engineering rundown, is $163.94 is what I've come up with for reserve contribution needs for the master alone. So.
Okay.
So the point is, you could take the raise up front this year for
We
$200.
take it this year. and
Maybe
just-
have nothing, maybe it goes down next year, maybe it goes up $20, but you're not taking.
But it's not gonna be a big hit, whatever it is, it's not gonna be a huge hit. In this proposal, by the way, Sagewood absolutely gets a deduction, their dues goes down, because we've taken their surplus year after year, and I'm crediting it towards that $17,000 brings their dues down $16 a head. Everyone else goes up a few dollars, but theirs goes down $16 a head.
So Sagewood would have some benefit from that
Because
proposal.
they've actually used their surplus to fund the master, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, and they got the hugest, we took the hugest portion from them, that would make sense how they would get, we applied it back to them, then they would get the most benefit
Lion's
from.
share of the money came, because they had the largest surplus.
Yes, well, that makes sense. I mean, I'm kind of in favor of making the correction, because I think people paid for those service areas. I think they ought to, the money ought to go to the service areas.
I agree, I don't think it's so much of a question of
Yeah.
whether we should or should not.
Well, the question is whether,
Reimbursing that,
increase-
how do we do it?
How do
yeah,
you-
how do we go about and do this increase? So how, okay, so going back to that, you kind of explained, but then there's the first one that's not, it's increasing this, I see the 68, is that what you were saying, that we go up about almost 70 regardless?
That's just the raw numbers as we had gone through the workshops to come up with what we plan on spending for the year.
Okay.
So I don't think that number is changing in its form. It was up higher before, if you remember.
Right.
That's a good median number we've come up with.
Okay, so just to clarify, that's an additional of 70 from what we already seen, correct?
Right,
Or,
so the 240, 412.50 becomes 482.50.
okay, so I'm just wanting to clarify that. So we've seen, because people have probably gone out and they might have seen the numbers that's posted in Town Square. If we're saying that this is now a $70 increase to those numbers, I think that needs to be, that's what I'm making sure that everybody understands. And then the option is, do we even go up even higher?
To offset the.
Yeah, going up 200, over 200 to offset the problems, or do we just go about to the 70 and then do a special assessment? So that's kind of just, so everyone that's listening in, those are kind of what those options that you see on the agenda.
Let me give you some real numbers so it helps.
Okay.
We're talking about going from 412.50 to 484, $71.50 increase for just regular budget items. Okay, so if you did a special assessment, one-time special assessment, that number changes, doesn't change that number at all, but it does give you a special assessment of, so I don't know if my page to look at it, of
132.88?
132.88, you got it. So if that's what you, so add those two together and that's what you would end up with, so it's roughly $204, minus the 8,000, so it's gonna be under $200, but just slightly.
Okay.
And then, so let's say we wanted to go special assessment route, we have to have a majority vote on that.
Do we have to have a majority vote for a special assessment, or do we have, can we just do that
You
as
have
the
to
board?
have 75% of each of the voting memberships of the service, and then the majority of that 75%.
So that's probably, okay, so I'm kind of,
That's kind of what I heard today too, and I know that's,
That's an easy number to get if you're telling them that you're gonna raise the dues $200 from here forward. They'll vote for the special assessment, it's $138 and $130 some odd dollars and change, it's gonna be easier to peel off. However, I'm gonna say this for everyone listening, I'm still opposed to that as opposed to raising the dues, because I know we're gonna take a hit next year.
I am too, just to follow up, I agree, I think raising the dues up front, ripping the Band-Aid off is the right way to go to fix this problem and for next year's increase. But I somehow would love to get a voice from that from the rest of the residents or whoever there is interested to get that voice. I'm not sure the best way to do that.
Facebook poll.
Yeah, Facebook poll, see what it comes out
So
at.
you attract, when there's numbers involved, they attract attention.
They do.
yeah, I would, I think we should, obviously, if doing a special assessment, we will have to do something other than just a poll. We're gonna have to take another step to
Well,
actually
there is,
get.
but the poll will give us an idea of
Where-
it's even
whether-
worse.
Whether to take the step or not take the step, for that matter.
Okay.
Because if the poll comes back and we have a large agreement of people that say just raise the dues, then we don't even go the special assessment route. We just look at the proposal with the dues being raised.
Okay, well, I think I'm in favor of polling the community, letting them know what the situation is, if they're obviously not everyone's at this meeting, and just, I mean, I'm in favor of course, ripping the Band-Aid and just going up the extra, but I will like to see what people ultimately want to do as far
Let's
as,
put it in perspective for everyone's listening. We're talking about $200 a year, not $200 a month. I know that can hurt some budgets, but I'm pretty sure if you take the family of 5 out once a week, it probably offset that. So it's not a huge amount of money. It's gonna hurt, but it's not a huge amount of money. The ideal thing is it gets us back to where we can manage things correctly and stay on track. Now, remind you that we inherited these problems. The majority of the board, with the exception of one person, has been on the board just over a year, just slightly over a year, just learning how to deal with this. So I don't fault the board directly, I don't. But I do want to make sure that we don't do it going forward. If we've gone through this process and you don't learn something from it, then I'm going to be upset.
well, yeah, and I think we have kind of, and I think the communication with having this financial community and making sure that they have good communication with their accounting, I think that's going to clear up a lot of these issues moving forward, and we're going to get the accounts, make some adjustments, and kind of what I've been talking about. I wanted to see a little bit of a change, so make sure that communication is really good, and that we're we're having more checks and balances put in place, that we will, have that oversight that we need. And I think everybody will be much happier as we move forward and we can feel comfortable with the budgets. And it'll be more scrutiny towards as we spend the money, which I think people is kind of the concern as well.
Sure. The one thing that, I just want to make sure that I clarify is that the numbers when you're talking about the $91,000 deficit that's on our financials that you're using as the baseline, that number does not, does not take into consideration the CPA's entries that still have to be posted. And it is a large number. I mean, we're talking about $146,000 in revenue being taken out and the $36,000 of $35,000 worth of the reserves. So even if you were talking about putting back some of the reserve funds because they were there, in that, then that would make it somewhat of a difference. But, I mean,
Don't forget though, Richard, that that's not the only deficit. It goes back 3 or 4 years.
and that I don't know about.
Well-
I'm just wanting to raise the flag here, when you're basing your assumptions on numbers that we have right now, those numbers are not set in stone yet because there are the
They
adjustments
need
that
to
will
be
come
because
there.
we're trying to do the budget and we're trying to get those numbers. With your help, we'll get those numbers on, we'll make adjustments accordingly, I promise, with your approval, okay? So the reality is that it's like new light today. So if we can find out what that is and we can make it add up in our checks and balances work, then yeah, we'll change the number, absolutely.
Sure, anything that makes
And
makes it hurt less.
what's your deadline that you're saying?
Well, we're hoping to approve a budget November 16th.
No, 18th.
18th, sorry.
18.
Hey, you guys.
Barb?
There's some people online, since this is a town hall, they want to know at what point we're going to take questions that are coming up on the chat on this right-hand side.
I'm actually seeing this right now. I'm actually not really watching this chat. We could take questions whenever. And actually, I was just going to ask that exact question. Does anybody have any questions moving on with the financial situation here?
Yeah, the floor is open.
Yeah, I think that there's one from Tony. I don't know if he's still on or not. Tony,
Yeah,
wow.
I'm still on.
Tony?
Go ahead, Tony.
We also got a notice that there was like something in the neighborhood of a $20,000 increase in the management fees. How much of this fiscal hole that we dug ourselves into is due to that $20,000 increase in management fees?
I can speak to that.
Okay, go ahead,
We
Sean.
didn't increase our management fees. Management fees are flat $2,500 per month, but we didn't.
Can we get him closer to the mic? It is ridiculously difficult to hear.
We didn't increase our management fees. Actually, our contract with Associates is $2,500 a month, and when it renews, it'll go up, percentage, which will make it a little higher, $2,750 the next time, I believe. 27, yeah. So we haven't increased that hardly at all. What we did increase is we added another employee, which, technically the employees work under Associa, but they are exclusively dedicated to us. So as we add more employees, it obviously costs us more money. And the board selected an admin person that's been on about 3 months now, or 2.5 months, moving forward. So that did increase the budget. And that budget was a little more than $20,000. It's actually more like $80,000. In addition to that, we pay a service fee to Associa for employing these people for us. And that is 28% for the admin and the manager, and 32% for the maintenance man. That adds up to $85,000 additional that we send over for convenience fees.
And if I could just add on that, as far as let's call it burden, that burden accommodates all the payroll taxes, the state regulation, all that activity, as well as a markup to the employee. So it's just not 20%.
Even though we found our own maintenance man in our community, they're charging us a fee to find him.
They process payroll and everything.
Oh, that's the payroll, the FICA and all that, or is that a fee?
Correct. And I think, maybe not liking those things is a separate conversation than what we're in today. I agree, we could say we don't like this, we like this, we want to change our contract when it's up for renewal with Associate. That's all great, but as things sit now, we really want to look at.
I'm just curious though, as to whether this fee though, is it a fee or is it for payroll taxes and,
It's,
which is it, or are they two separate numbers? Is it 28% just to find the person, or are you clumping those two things into one topic?
it includes all the costs that are incurred for that employee, as far as
Okay.
payroll taxes, FICA, Medicare, health plan, insurance, dental, everything that the employee would sign up for.
Payroll taxes.
Okay, that makes more sense. It was kind of a bit misleading when we were saying it was just some type of a finder's fee, but
I
that
mean,
makes
I've
way
worked-
more sense.
Yeah, I mean, I work with other companies. That is pretty standard, you know?
It is. If you
Well,
Yeah.
well, at
if
least
you did it
my
yourself and you
husband,
had a payroll company, it's a
You pay for
similar
it.
burden rate. to do
yeah,
it.
so.
Yes, exactly.
So just a follow-up
And you might
question, if I might, because you
experienced-
said it's the
Yes, go
addition of
ahead.
another body. Who determined that additional body was needed? The company providing the body, or did we?
We did. We did, but quite some time ago too. Unfortunately, that is a little bit of a different conversation that we've had kind of on repeat here. Yes, a secondary body was needed here, is needed here, and the board made that decision probably 6 months ago or so now.
Yeah, it was in June.
Yeah, that was back.
Not quite 6 months, but yeah.
And again, something where, if things change, that's also open for discussion. But as we are right now, this is where we are.
So the budget is a target to go through for what we plan to spend now. Doesn't mean we can't save money, doesn't mean we can't spend more, it just means it's a target to what we think we're spending now. So it's a snapshot. So right now, that's what we're spending, we have the extra body, it's part of our budget.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead. What's your name?
You got it.
Heather.
Okay, Heather. Heather's,
I am not the most analytical when it comes to math and bookkeeping.
Mhm.
But it appears to me, listening to all this, from what I understand, you guys took over for the old management company approximately 13 months ago, a little around a year or so. So you're seeing our account each month, you're processing various payments and credits, debits, whatever. How is it that, is there nobody, I guess what I'm trying to say is who's balancing the book at the end of the day? And how come all these errors have been going on for an entire 13 months? And we're just now getting back to the point where we're like, oh, well, we'll have to look at that. Oh, we'll have to correct that. Why are we going a year and just now catching it? Is it only because the finance committee finally got together
No.
and found all this stuff?
The conversations for Fishhawk have been ongoing. The budgets, the information as far as transitioning into us was a little challenging as far as the information that was provided and gotten into our systems and everything. Some of the cleanup had occurred already, and this is the reporting of that activity. The biggest challenge, I believe, just has been in dealing with the developers' townhomes that were being put in. And in that light, it's been a challenge in trying to get the actual numbers as far as what's going on with that process. And I would have to say that the first 6 months of the year, the questions have been going on as far as the receivables, because we have been posting those assessments, yet they haven't been collected, so your receivables have been growing in that, and the collections efforts and conversations that ensue from that. I know that Heather, the CAM for this property, has been heavily involved in trying to reconcile and get her arms around those quantities and dealing with the information. Originally, everything from the budget that was handed off to us was that everything was already billing and in play. With that, then it became conversations that have had to occur in saying, well, why isn't the developer ponying up with this? And so there were additional dialogue and conversations going back and forth on who is responsible for that. And only until we got to the point where we can say, okay, we've nailed it down now and understand that once a certificate of occupancy is issued, then at that point, whoever is owning it, whether it's still in developer or not, that's when the assessment should be in play. So there's 5 different sections, there's different unit types that are associated, and that reconciliation has just been a nurturing and ongoing process. The delay from the audit from the CPA is a good statement as far as saying, what that lag is in that process. I know that we've gotten the actual audit was completed in the June timeframe and published. The adjustments, I've only seen those adjustments coming through in the month of October. And through that, then there's the conversations that ensue from that as well, and saying, how should those be accounted for properly in that process? Coupled with that, the sense of urgency that we're at now with, we have to produce a budget. So there was a lot of different focus and emphasis that was going on through that process. There are, from the accounting point of view with Associate, we have accountants that are generating the financials. We have the client accounting specialist on a monthly basis that reviews that process as well, in conjunction with the CAM that's producing the financials that are being generated and communicated to the board. There's been lots of dialogue back and forth on all the activities, and it's been just a challenge in weeding through all of that.
Hands in the pot and things are slipping through.
Well, it's not that they're slipping through, they're being worked, and it's just a matter of the timing.
If I may answer, just to one very valid point here is, I can attest to it facts. We could talk all day about it, but the fact of the matter is, if the board had not appointed a finance committee, and the finance committee had not looked into this under a fine-tooth,
That was kind of what I was trying to say.
had they not,
Lightly.
we would have already had an approved budget wildly incorrect that we had done through workshops with Heather Bates. Not blaming Heather at all, I'm just saying, Heather is correct. It is correct. If it wasn't for them, this would have kept going unknown and unbeknownst. Richard, you and I would have probably never had this conversation. I mean, just, not in a bad way, but it just wouldn't have happened. So we do owe a lot of credit to them, and I hope we can get it all solved.
Absolutely, and I think, every association that has a finance committee, I mean, there's value in that process. I mean, you have a large organization, it's a lot of dollars, and,
But the point she is making, we have a lot of frustrated residents asking the same question. Where was Associate in this 6 months ago? Where was Associate in this 8 months ago?
Right, I mean, the residents around here, the people that I've talked to say we pay them a lot of money. Why didn't they figure this out and put us in the right direction? That's what I'm getting.
Really put us in a forward momentum, unless you have something great that pulls you out of the doghouse, but that is where places Associate.
TJ said this to me, and I repeated it to Richard today. The reason we pay the money is so we don't have to do this. The reason we pay the money is so we don't have to worry about it. The fact that I'm having to worry about it is frustrating to me. My time is much more valuable than this. The $200 we're talking about paying this year, I would have scribbled that check out in a heartbeat for the 60 hours I put into this. So, it's just one of those things. So we expect it to be, my clients expect me to do what I'm supposed to do. When I screw up, they let me know, and I know you know the same thing. We're not kind of doing that. We're trying to say, how can we fix this? I mean, really, what do we do to fix this? We've had a young board, not much details, a crappy transfer. Okay, got it. What's this?
Absolutely, and you have the right people in the room in order to fix it. And I initiated a conversation with you this morning, gave you my contact information, and we're going to work through this process. I want to. Your deadline is to approve by the 18th. Within the next couple of days, I want to get with the accounting team in order to true up the actual CPA report, get those adjustments in, and work through that process to produce the actual numbers so that at least you could do a sanity check.
If you have a deadline, that'll be helpful to me.
Yeah.
I'm actually visiting clients the next 4 days. If you get the data back to us by end of day on Friday, I can review it, get it to the board over the weekend, and then we're on track for the next meeting.
That was my next question. Between the two of you, did we sound like we could have
Okay.
proposals done by then?
And knowing what they're asking for to make this adjustment, yeah,
And that's what he's saying, is those adjustments have been posted, maybe in October, we haven't seen the October financials, if they show up, the numbers will change.
Sure.
And if there's justification, he can explain it to me, I'll absolutely gladly change the number, no problem. So,
okay.
Okay, so I think we're good there. I'm going to put a poll out on Facebook, no later than sometime tomorrow, just to get a feel for the community, what do they feel about special assessment or a complete due increase. Does anyone have any other questions regarding financial? We do have two other topics that I'm going to be going over on the agenda that do tie into financial, but not so much on the current numbers and current discussion.
I'm gonna go with that.
So, Richard, are you going to be handling this here forward? Are you going to be looking at our books? Are you going to be?
I'm gonna be overseeing it.
I don't want you to walk away this week.
See ya.
And then we find out that somebody else is taking your hat, and we fall back into more issues.
You will have my I'm personally not going to be involved in every activity that's going on. However, your account is extremely valuable and important to Associate. I recognize that we should be doing a better job with that, and we will have the full breadth of our resources. Associate is a large organization, and we will work through in order to make sure that happens. We have an accounting team. We have the CASs, which report directly up to me. We have the CAM. We have Vice President of Operations working with that as well. So there's an entire team that's here to work with that. But I'm not going to walk out this door and say, see ya. I will make sure that I partner with the Finance Committee and get the information done and make sure that we're on the right track and have, a pulse on what's actually happening. It's important to me to work through that.
I think one of the questions I want to clarify was that she's just hoping maybe you'll check on it to make sure it's okay.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I think the frustration for everyone is, it's November, and we're still hearing that this report is incorrect. This has to be corrected, but the CPA needs to make these changes. Please, it's November. Why are we still, why is the audit correct? Why is the budget, the balance sheet correct? Why are the numbers not?
I agree, but the reasons we're here is not fun. I like being here at this point in time. This should have passed a while back.
Exactly.
I think what is if I may, what is a more important question? Does the financial committee need anything now that they don't have access to going forward to be able to do our own health checks?
Just whatever numbers are gonna post, the October finances, if we can post those to our spreadsheets and we verify them, for check sums, then we can get a closer number of what the estimated, shortfalls will be. Everything will be better at this point, only 2 months out then, and we're much more accurate detail. So yes, I mean, if he doesn't get it, he's gonna try to work his match, he's going out strong and shooting, but he's gonna get it done, I'm pretty sure. So, if that happens, then I promise you I will give everything in fair shape as fast as I can.
Sure, because that's what's important. As much as we need to go, Associate, we need you to do this. Associate, we need you to check in. Associate, we need to be on this, which, as much true as that may be, it's much better to know that internally we have a check and balance system that we have. So, no matter where the problem falls, it's a phone call, and we're not going to be upside
I
down.
think what I'm saying is,
And you know what? That's
We're
okay.
glad that you are.
That's the whole point, right?
Well, that's
I
the
do
purpose.
have one question here coming in on so what is the plan to get Park Square Homes to pay? Well, there isn't. Park Square Homes is not paying this deficit. They don't owe us any money. It was money that we calculated saying that we were getting, and we were in fact not getting it because it was never owed. It was never due. It's an accounting error and a very large one. I hope that makes sense to whomever asked that. If you have any questions, please speak up. We can get even more detailed into it, but that accounts for a large portion of this deficit that we're speaking of.
it does.
So Tommy, basically, just to make it a little bit more clear, we thought we were getting the money. The money was included in the budget. We spent the money, but we were never owed the money.
100% correct, yes. That is correct. As we're finding out furthermore, we accounted for income coming in that was never actually happening. Think of it like you run a concert venue and you're expecting $1 million worth of events this year, and then COVID hits. Except you took all the money up front and spent it.
It's not covered, it's all cabinet.
That's unfortunately the
But
situation.
that is the situation.
And to make up the shortfall, we took the money from the service areas to provide positive cash flow so we could pay the bills.
Yes,
If we couldn't print money, all of us would be doing it.
it had to come from somewhere.
So, yeah, so that's, and so we're trying, at this point, we're trying to correct from that, and that's where we're at. Although that answers.
However, and just to piggyback on that, when the dust settles, overall, the association may have a surplus of $7,000 last year. So however the numbers are going to flush themselves out, it's not going to be a deficit.
Right.
90-something thousand dollars.
Not as I explained last meeting, we're not bankrupt, we're cash flow positive, and we're all gonna live and breathe tomorrow, everything's fine. But to make our accounts sane and make sense and keep our neighborhoods paying the right amounts and earning the right amounts for reserves, and the master needs to have money to be able to act and do things in projects, this is necessary, otherwise we are essentially 2 years behind.
Currently, the master owes the service areas the money that the master used to pay for the bills,
What would happen is we
and that
collect it,
needs to be repaid.
yeah, it would be repaid and transferred back to the respective accounts, that's exactly right.
Totally makes sense.
Okay, I only had 2 other items here on the agenda, and I think one of them could probably be answered right away. The community has a lot of requests about being able to take electronic payment, particularly through Zelle. Is this possible? Okay, I have another suggestion for that might make it possible.
The payments are basically through direct debit, through a bank's, their own personal banking, and/or through town square.
Okay, so basically, the associate doesn't have a way to do it. What if we were to open up another bank account just for its sole job of taking in money electronically and then depositing those funds on a monthly basis, moving them over? Because we could easily open up an account with whomever.
Here's the issue that I know what you're gonna tell you.
Okay,
When you get a lump sum from another account, there's no way to track where it came from, so now they have to go back and figure out how to post the money to the accounts. If you don't make it electronic, with the account number attached to it, so it can actually be posted correctly, it's a huge amount of mess. And so I'm not recommending that, but I may have a hybrid solution I can help you with. So I'll talk to you about that, because what I do for a living these days is write software. So it might be a way for us to assist you in that and get what you want at the same time. Sure.
okay, but I think that conversation needs to be separate at this point.
Yeah, so
and
that's good, so that's something to work toward, and just to know that they are looking for automated payment. The other topic that we were looking into is changing our current payment structure from being all upfront of the year to start to make quarterly payments. We can change that. I do see some benefit into it, as Sean was suggesting, if we're spending too much money or a big project comes through and we spend too much money on something, but we're looking to get something approved in October, you go to Treasury, we have money, and Treasury should be able to say, we spent a lot last quarter, why don't we wait till next quarter and we still have money coming in the door?
Right.
As opposed to being broke mid-year accidentally.
Because we haven't budgeted well or not careful. We just don't have the cash flow. Cash flow comes in the beginning of the year, we send that triple cash flow from people who pay on time and that's the end of it. So we were proposing to do a quarterly with a fee, or kind of like we do with your taxes. Or fee is this, but if you want to pay it over this time, we're going to pay this, and this on top of it. And the idea behind that was it could generate a little bit more revenue, not exempt, I'm aware, but it also gives some of the members the opportunity to pay $100 and some odd dollars a quarter as opposed to.
Also making raising the master not so painful.
Correct.
So,
The frequency of the assessments is all within the board's control in order to do it, so the board would just need to vote on that. As far as charging a fee for that, I would shy away from that. I would not recommend that you do something like that, but you definitely can change the assessments.
Even if we didn't, I think the main goal is to break it up, also than the fee.
have a more consistent cash flow as opposed to a once a year cash flow, oh my God, it's not.
And then people could pay it at the beginning of the year if they're comfortable with that and they're able to, they can just pay it up and then it'll show as a credit balance until every quarter passes. That's something we can certainly do, it just needs a board vote.
And one question to that though is, would it add any cost to processing maybe 4 payments as opposed to one on your end? No, so on fee, so therefore. Great, good.
Okay. I like that answer. We'll present it to the board and see what they say. I like the idea of some sort of electronic processing. As of right now, we can't do it. Maybe not in the immediate future, but
But they do have electronic processing, I think, pay to Town Square.
because they're really looking to do bank transfer. They're not looking for an auto debit. I have a lot of people that don't want to give Town Square the bank information.
And I'll tell you why, from my perspective, what if something changed, my bank account changes, something goes on, make a debit, I get a late fee because.
Right, you sent to the attorney.
I have no control over it until I have to contact to do so.
Well, I'm not talking, the direct debit is one thing, but you could also make just a one-time payment through Town Square.
Right, but it's a service fee, right?
There it is.
It's $2.95.
So they're looking for something like Zelle, which is just here's the money. Go.
Oh, we'll talk offline.
Yeah, I mean, if we could do something with it, great. At least right now, I promised I'd ask and find
That's
out.
what I'm saying, I've got a couple solutions that our doctors use that are in my company that might help you guys. Just saying, we'll talk offline.
All right. Did you have anything else, or were there any more questions?
I don't, those are my questions. This is, I know it's kind of late. It's an open floor, though. If anyone has anything, now's the time. I'm going to put a Facebook post out, probably 2 of them. We're going to do 2 polls. I want to do one on quarterly payments versus the annual, and another one on the finances, what's the best way to fund them, whether we want to do a special assessment or raise the dues. And
make a suggestion on your poll, ask each unit to vote at once, because my wife would vote, and I would vote, and it would taint it. Or cancel each other, I'm not sure which.
I actually, yeah, I have a way of doing that. That's okay.
I think what he's saying, we can figure it out.
If there's a way to do that where I can only each user, so you'd have to create
Well,
multiple
can I just print
accounts.
ballots and take them to those polls? And that's fine too.
You gotta use the chat.
All right. Is there any more questions online or in the chat? Anyone else want to speak?
I do have one question related to money we spent. This is Tony Biancarosa again. We paid for the tree that got struck by lightning to be removed and replaced. They cut it down to half size. Do we have an ETA and when they're going to finish the removal and replacement?
That's CDD. We actually are not responsible for those trees. And I forget, what was the date for the CDD meeting? Do you remember? Thursday. So Heather will be present, I believe. She usually is. And then we'll get an update from that. But if you want to go directly to the CDD, we have also the contact information for them, but that's the best route to get that information.
We have kind of another CDD question here on the, I'm sorry, Tony, did you have more there?
No, it's just one. So if I understood correctly, that's not money that came out of our budget. That's completely separate. That's the CDD money. Okay, thank you. That's perfect. Thank you.
Correct. And yeah, that meeting's Thursday. I should be here as well, so I can update a Facebook post on the results on that. The other question here is a CDD question. Any idea what's going on with the lake and rain causing it to overflow? The CDD is still discussing it. They're aware of the situation. As it sits right now, there are no real good solutions at the moment, but I know they do have conversations with engineers discussing about other solutions. They were talking about a boardwalk, and I forgot the other one at the moment, but I do know that will be another topic of conversation at the CDD meeting this week.
So if the water comes up so much sauce, you just still fit that, and it'll be fine.
That's a different problem.
That's another problem.
That's a bigger problem, but.
Taxes go up, water front property.
Yeah, so.
Just get up there.
So yes, so that issue again falls onto the CDD.
And it is a rarity that it's this high. It hasn't been this high.
Yeah, it is kind
I don't
of.
think I've ever seen it this high.
It
but I
doesn't
have
flow
heard that.
anywhere else.
I'm sorry.
I actually was asking my friend who's an engineer that worked on the community about that the other night, and he said that it's a spring-fed lake, and it's just all the rain and the grounds are saturated. There's nothing, like I saw on Facebook, someone said something was clogged. there's nothing clogged. There's not an overflow for that lake. There's,
Oh, by the way, just so you know, that was just a joke. That was not serious, but.
Pull that plug.
Yeah, it's an issue, they're aware of it, and I don't know what's to come of it, but my guess is it's gonna go away. And we're gonna be back to normality at some point here. It's Florida. Anyone else?
You wanna advertise your food truck event, is it still happening?
So,
That's another meeting,
yes,
but.
I am trying to do the food truck badly. I have been playing phone tag with the company, and I've been chasing them for the past week. I have to do a better job of chasing them. I have been very busy with the budgets and the other board items and the agendas and trying to nail down a proper form for our meetings. I'm making another phone call tomorrow, and as soon as I have something, I will update everyone, I promise.
If you like some assistance, and there are people there that might have some time to call for you, and then get a hold of the numbers so they can.
If, yes, if anyone's willing to help me with that, that would be great. Sean's cell phone number is,
That was smooth.
I can call somebody tomorrow, I'll be driving for 12 hours.
I actually have the company, and that's where the quotes came from. For some reason, they keep telling me they're gonna call me right back, and then I get stuck doing 300 other things, and they don't call back, so.
Or if they do call you, don't get to it right away and play.
Well, yeah, or they're not leaving me a voicemail, so, but I can tell you, that they haven't called me.
I can help, I'm gonna get 12 hours in the car tomorrow.
I'll text you their number.
All right, I guess that resolves that issue.
I'm gonna put you on the spot, I was just curious, I'm sorry.
No, it's just, you know, it's been falling through the cracks with everything else I've been doing.
But yeah, we actually, I mean, going to have a meeting tomorrow about talking about some of the stuff. We'll try to get, you know, I'm more focused on the Santa event, but, you
I
know.
know, I'll focus on the food truck, don't worry about it.
So hopefully,
I've been playing
so hopefully we can get the other issues. We have kind of a strict budget, so that's where we're at. If you can make the phone call, that'd be great.
I'm glad you.
Okay, any more questions? Anything more in the chat?
Yeah, that's it. All right, folks, if we have nothing else, I am going to call meeting adjourned, and thank you, everyone. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, TJ.
Thanks for coming.
I didn't really do a lot today.
Yeah, but again, you know Associates sitting in a bad spot at the moment. Presence is everything. That's why I asked you to be here. I'm glad you did, Richard, because trying to do this over Zoom, you're going to lose some more credibility.
No, we want to do
It's
it.
worth the drive, and we appreciate it.
And I think that what we're trying to do, obviously, is we knew when we took this over from Rosetta, there were gonna be challenges, and we knew that. And there have been those challenges that the foreseen and the unforeseen challenges have all arisen, right? And we knew that. And I think what we're trying to do is we want to take accountability, we want to own it, and we want to make it right. And we know that some of those issues, like the budgeting for the townhomes, that was handed to us, but ultimately today, right now, we own it, we want to make it right, and we want to get a budget in front of you that works, whether it's in concert with the finance committee, whether it's their budget that, comes forward. We want to make sure that we're doing that in partnership with the community so that.
Just to correct you, with their budget. Their budget.
That's what I mean, yeah, so we want to make sure that whether it's ours, theirs, or a hybrid of those two, whatever it is, we want to make sure that it's reflective of what the community needs moving forward.
How would we say this?
Our budget.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, that's what it'll be in the end, right? Because it's the community's budget, and we're here to serve the community, so that's what we want to get to in the end. And, certainly we wish we could have discovered, especially with the townhomes, and gotten a hold of the developer sooner. It took us a couple of months for them to even respond and then provide the information about the certificate of occupancy. But ultimately, again, we did chase those things down. That's done sort of backroom-ish, if you will. So, a lot of people will sit and wonder why it took so long, and there are reasons for that. But ultimately, we do want to make sure that we're, partnering with and serving you guys the way that you need to be served, and in the light, so that no one feels like there's something going on that shouldn't be or shouldn't have gone on.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you very much.
All right, we appreciate it. Good night.